So, I want to talk about the interview that Kayla Nicole recently did with Angel Reese and also the reactions that it got from people online. And I'm not going to play the interview. If you want to see it, it's on Angel Reese's page, Unapologetically Angel. But I did watch most of the interview because I wanted to hear the full context of everything that was said and not just go off the clips that went viral. And after watching the interview, I think the objective was to shift the narrative of Kayla being the bitter ex-girlfriend of Travis Kelce. And I think she wanted to show the world who she was outside of him. But unfortunately, the parts of the interview where she did talk about herself were overshadowed because they spent quite a bit of time talking about Travis. And I completely understand Kayla wanting to vent about how she's feeling when it comes to Travis, especially because of all the public scrutiny and harassment that she has had to deal with and is still having to deal with from the Swifties or the fans of Taylor Swift. I can imagine how hard that is to deal with, and she is allowed to talk about the bullying, but there is a way for her to do that without speaking about Travis and their past relationship so much. She could have said something like, "It's crazy that we both moved on and the Swifties won't leave me alone." Or she could have said something like, "I don't even think about my ex, but I'm still getting bullied by the Swifties." In my opinion, that is as much attention she should have given to anything having to do with Travis in that interview, if at all. In my opinion, she should have told Angel not to ask her any specific questions about her relationship with Travis because Kayla has already done this before. She's already talked about Travis in a past interview, and too much time has passed for her to still be doing this every time she sits down with somebody. From an optics standpoint, it looks bad because Travis isn't mentioning her publicly at all. Anytime we see Travis, he is hugged up with Taylor, and anytime we hear about Kayla, it's because she's somewhere on an interview talking about Travis. From an optics perspective, it just looks like Travis has moved on and Kayla hasn't. And it especially looks bad because it's been a year since he and Taylor got together. Now, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Maybe Kayla and Travis are still communicating, but if he's not publicly mentioning her directly or indirectly, she should not be mentioning him. And even if he was mentioning her, he has moved on to another woman, so Kayla should be paying him dust. And ladies, take notes. If you and a man have gone your separate ways and he's in another relationship, the most beneficial thing for you to do is act like that man does not exist. Keep your dignity intact and don't mention him on social media. Don't post subliminals about him, and that includes memes. Don't talk about him with your mutual friends. Don't try to get his attention in any way because it's just going to make you look desperate and pressed over somebody who doesn't like you anymore. And that is unfortunately how Kayla looks right now. And I saw women saying, "Oh, well, how is this any different from Taylor Swift making all these songs and albums about her ex-boyfriends and her past relationships after they break up?" And you're right, it is the same, but the optics are different. Taylor is a well-established artist, and she's known for her music more than she's known for her romantic relationships. And most of the time we see Taylor, she's being an artist. Her relationships do not overshadow her being an artist. And because we never see Kayla trending for her actual occupation, and she instead is always going viral for discussing Travis, optics-wise, she appears to be more desperate and more pressed. And I'm not saying it's fair because Taylor could be just as desperate and pressed as Kayla looks right now about her past relationships and her ex-boyfriends. But it's just going to be perceived differently because Taylor is known for being an artist first. And this is why I say that women, and especially Black women, we need optics training because we try to compare apples to oranges. And a lot of us don't seem to understand how two things that are similar can be perceived very differently depending on the circumstances. And with this situation, when you add the racial and financial components to it, a white man dating a Black woman, then moving on to a white woman with way more status and money, because of those things, anytime Kayla opens her mouth about Travis, people are automatically going to make it seem like she's mad and bitter because Travis got a white woman who's more famous. Even if Kayla really isn't mad about that, and even if she's completely over Travis, that is not how it's going to look the longer she continues to talk about him. So in my opinion, Kayla just needs to stop. She has said all there is to say at this point. There's nothing she can say now that's going to make the situation any better, and her continuing to discuss Travis is not benefiting her. Travis is not the first high-earning man Kayla has dated, and he probably won't be the last. And Kayla, in my opinion, is making it way too easy for people to make him more important and relevant than than he actually is. After I saw how he conducted himself on that podcast, that showed his poor character. He just seems like a disaster waiting to happen. So I think that Kayla is giving him more relevancy than he deserves. And she could also be turning off other high earning men that could be checking for her because she's continuously bringing up Travis and she doesn't appear to be over him. Even if she is over him, that is how it's going to look if she keeps bringing him up in interviews. And in this interview that she did with Angel, I heard her mention that she was a Scorpio, and Scorpios do tend to hold on to things and people longer than they should. So she needs to learn how to move on. Even the story that she told about her and Iman Shumpert and how he dumped her for Tiana Taylor, and so to get revenge, she dressed up for her as Halloween. It's giving obsessed. It's giving that she doesn't know how to let go when it's time to let go. That story was very cringy to me. From an optic standpoint, it made her look weird. And in the interview, she said she wasn't that person anymore, and maybe she isn't, but she still seems to have a hard time letting go. That's all I'm saying. Now, the other part of the interview that I want to talk about is when Kayla clarified that her going 50-50 with Travis and him never paying for anything during their relationship was a rumor. And in the interview, she said something along the lines of, well, do I look like a woman who would go 50-50 with a man? And of course, black men got mad. And I saw where the rappers Cameron and Mace responded to it. And they basically responded how black men always respond when a black woman says she's not going 50-50 with a man, or when a black woman expresses that she has high standards in a man. They said that Kayla was entitled, and that's why Travis left and found a woman who has more money than Kayla and a woman who's willing to go 50-50 with him. And of course, black men online are agreeing with them. And listen, I just want to say I am not unrealistic. Most women today are helping with the bills in their household, even if they're dating or married to a provider. If they're not going 50-50, maybe it's 70-30 or 80-20. I think when most women say we're not going 50-50 with a man, we're saying that a man has to carry most of the financial burden. And I think that men understand that. I think that black men understand that. But because they aren't traditionally oriented men on average, and they're used to black women especially going half on the bills, and in many cases paying most of the bills, and not requiring black men to pay much, if anything at all, they get triggered when a black woman says she's not going 50-50. And mind you, men can loudly state their preferences on these podcasts. Oh, she must be fit, feminine, and friendly. She must bring this and that to the table. They're always announcing their preferences, and women sit there and listen. And for the women who object to anything that they ask for in a woman, they shame those women and they pretty much say it's just their preference. But the minute women announce our preferences like they do, it's a problem, especially if it's a black woman announcing that we want a provider, because we're not allowed to want that like other races of women. If you notice, no other community is having the 50-50 discussion as much as black people. And that is because it's the standard in other communities for men to pay most of the bills. On average, notice, black men don't really object to non-black women who have the same standard because they know they can't pull that with them. They may get away with that with those ghetto non-black women that live in the hood or grew up around a lot of black people. But the non-black women who are on par with Kayla, no, there will be no discussion about it. There will be no debate about it. They would know that they wouldn't even be able to step to her if they were not providing. And this is why a lot of black men prefer to be with black women, because they know on average we are more willing to foot the bill and deal with men who make much less than we do. And their collective response to Kayla is just more proof that black men on average are not traditional men. They're pretending to be on these podcasts, but they're really not. They want a woman to bring a lot to the table financially. They want 50-50 relationships, which are not traditional relationships. And look, if that's what you want, that's okay. I'm not a 100% traditional woman either. But the difference is I'm not online pretending to be something I'm not. These men want traditional benefits, but they're not willing to be traditional men. Most black men want women to take care of them. And this is why Mace brought up how Travis left Kayla for a woman with more money and how she's willing to go 50-50. And we don't even know if that's true when it comes to Taylor, but let's just say it is. Taylor is a billionaire. She is rare. Most women in her tax bracket, they're probably going to have to date down. They're probably going to have to date men with less money. But what these men don't want to admit is that the average everyday white woman is hypergamous. And even though that is statistically shifting and there are more women becoming the breadwinners in their household, regardless of race, black women still make up the majority of the women in the United States that are the primary breadwinners in their homes. And we also make up the majority of women who marry hypogamously or marry down. So of course, whenever a black woman says that we are not willing to do that, all hell breaks loose because they are not used to us having those standards. And I saw where Cameron was like, oh, well, it's her attitude. That's the problem. It's her attitude. And I saw people in the comments saying that Kayla was being very arrogant. But I understand why she said it the way she said it, because Travis and the internet was really trying to make it seem like he didn't spend any money on her at all. And they were really trying to run with this narrative that she was another black woman paying for a man to be with her and paying for this white man to be with her when it was all a lie. So I completely understand why she was arrogant with her clapback after that, because y'all had her fucked up. And this is why I said she's talking about Travis way too much and giving him way too much of her energy, because he was the reason that rumor got started. And that was because he was trying to impress those Negro podcast dusties, and he's trash for that. So yeah, she was arrogant about it because of the way people were running with that false story. And let's be real, they ran with the story because they were mad that Kayla, an attractive black woman, dated a white man, and a high-earning white man at that. So they had to make it seem like he wasn't doing anything for her financially because she's a black woman and he always preferred white women. As if it's a secret that most white men prefer white women. Like, what black woman believes that most white men prefer black women? Like, who believes that? And sure, there are black women who are going to get with some dusty non-black men. There are going to be non-black men with bad character that like black women. And there will also be non-black men with good character that like black women. Get over it. Not all of us are going to date dusty non-black men. Get over it. And they love pushing that narrative about black women who date interracially because they want us all to experience what most black women experience with dusty black men. They want to be able to say, see, he's just as bad as black men, or see, that's why you should have got a black man. I saw a black man on Twitter say that about Kayla. Oh, she should have got a black man, as if it would have been any different. It's just so crazy because when black women get with dusty non-black men, especially if they're white, it makes black men feel better about being dusty. That's why you saw so many black people jump into report on that Queen of Kings story. See, the white men can be dusty just like us. You got a white pookie. And I say all the time that white men can be dusty too, but when y'all equate dusty white men to black men, or equate a failed interracial relationship involving a black woman to a typical black relationship, all you're doing is admitting that black men and black relationships on average are fucked up. So you're exposing yourselves. But listen, all of the interracial dating fear mongering and scare tactics directed at black women, that isn't going to change that on average, non-black men are more traditionally oriented. And if a black woman is looking for a provider, we're probably going to have better luck over the fence. If black women don't want to worry about having these stupid discussions on going 50-50 on the bills, or worried about if the man that we encounter agrees with men like that, men like Kevin Samuels and Mace and Cameron and all these other nigga podcasts, if we don't want to deal with men who think like that, we'll have better luck choosing from our options over the fence. That is just the truth of the matter. And many of us black women are having better luck with non-black men. We're not having these silly discussions with men that we're dating in real life. So bringing up all this failed swirling and divesting gone wrong, it will not change that. And it's also not going to change black men's overall position in this society. And you would think that instead of black men trying to prove how some non-black men are quote unquote just as bad as black men, that they would put their energy on becoming better men as a collective instead. But no, they'd rather sit around and talk about why women should go 50-50. And I know there are a minority of non-black men in the manosphere having similar discussions, but the difference between them and black men is that the movers and shakers in non-black communities, the non-black men who are actually providing and pursuing power, it balances them out more. And the dudes on the podcast, they're not their representatives. That's the difference. And the collective unproductive behavior of black men while having so much arrogance and entitlement is just wild. I keep saying they're not embarrassed enough for me, but that's in part because black women make them think their behavior is okay. We sit around and entertain these stupid nigga podcasts, and we make them feel powerful when they're not. And that's why I believe that black women should stop engaging in these discussions, stop going on these podcasts, stop watching them, stop announcing our standards, stop announcing that you refuse to go 50-50 with a man, and just show your standards through your actions. Many of us have been saying for years now that we're no longer settling, that we want more, we're raising our standards, and the word is out, but now it's time to move in silence. So ladies, down in the comments, let me know how you think women should express our dating standards in men without making public announcements on social media or on these podcasts. And share any tips you have on moving strategically after a breakup. Also, let me know what you think about this story in general. Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch up with you in the next video.